Hi folks, it's Andy. Welcome to this week's Kendo rant. We've got some questions for you today. Not so many, so it's going to be a short, sharp episode today, just like my Debana Kote. So, we'll jump into it in just a moment. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, you know, all the YouTube stuff. But most importantly, if you like the videos that I put out, I've got some great videos coming soon. All right, some really cool ones. I've got a new series on the way. I've got some instructional videos in the pipeline. It's going to be good. It's going to be real good. And it's all going to be free. All you've got to do is shop at KendoStar. That's what keeps it going. All right? So get to KendoStar.com. That's my website that sells amazing Kendo equipment. Come on, you know the score. You probably shop there. Most people have by now. We're like the most popular place with the best rated reviews and all that. So, you know, there's probably loads of people in your dojo already using it, if you're at a good dojo anyway. Yeah, so get to KendoStar.com. Right, let's get into the questions then. So first one, would you please make a video? This one came to me by email, by the way. Would you please make a video about how to use the wrist and elbow of both hands to maneuver the bokken sword or shinai around the opponent while still keeping in the center? For example, when pretend you're about to hit men from the right and then switch to Kote from the left. So I got a bit more context on this question. It was after watching the How to Beat a Blocker video. It's quite an old video that now, isn't it? But it's still a good one. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it, How to Beat a Blocker. People always complain about their opponents blocking in Kendo. And it really kind of makes me laugh when you hear people say like, oh, well, I would have hit that if you hadn't blocked it. Like, yeah. That's why I blocked it. You know, so go and watch that video. Anyway, so what you're asking about is, you know, how to maneuver the shinai on a sort of angle that isn't necessarily up and down whilst keeping your left hand in the middle. And it's tricky. I know it's tricky, but the key is you've mentioned wrists and elbows, and the elbows are key to this, all right? Lots of people try to maneuver the shinai using their elbows, and that's why their left hand goes astray and all over the place, all right? The same when you do kirikaishi, yeah? People try to swing the shinai with the elbows this way, and it doesn't stay in the middle, all right? So first is practice lots of kirikaishi, because that is definitely going to help you, all right? Kirikaishi, when you do your left and right sayumenuchi, you have to make sure that you're keeping the left hand in the middle. As you swing the shinai, this part's the same, this part's even the same. The only bit that's really different is how we turn our wrists this way, all right? So think about it this way. Put your hands like that, turn them this way, turn them that way. See, I'm not really moving my elbows that much. I'm just using my wrists, okay? It's the same sort of thing, all right? Instead of this way, I'm coming this way, but I'm turning my wrists as I swing. Now, of course, I am swinging slightly more diagonal as I do it. So there is some element of my elbows, but most importantly, it's my wrists that are doing the work and controlling the trajectory of the sword here, all right? My elbows, I'm not moving them off the same, you know, and this remains the same. I'm just twisting this way, all right? It's the same when you do that kind of technique. So if they're blocking like this and you want to get into that kote, it's there with the wrists, not with the elbows. All right? Kirikaishi is your friend. All right? It's not a very nice friend. It's not a very loving friend, but it's the one that's always there for you. Okay, next one. Hi, Andy. When applying the Hara, the core muscles tense, making it difficult to breathe out. If the Hara is fully applied at the point of contact of a cut, how then does one use kakegoe at the same time? How then can one obtain kikentai no ichi if the voice cannot be used at the point of kime? Does this mean every kendo guy is not applying the Hara correctly? Thanks. So this is from the Kendo Show Early Access group. If you're not in that group, there's a link below. That's the best place to post your questions. Free group to join. Thousands of members, all different grades, ranging up to like literally 7th Dan. I don't think we've got any 8th Dans in there, but not yet. So get in that group because like it's a great place to post questions. Right. So there's a bit of confusion here. It's a great question, and I think it's something that a lot of people get confused about, especially when we start talking about using the Hara. So the Hara your hara is this area, all right? It's your tummy, all right? It's your abdomen. That's the hara, okay? And when you don't hear it much, actually. You don't hear it much in Japan when they're teaching about cutting technique. They say you should use your hara when you use your voice. And what that means is don't scream from the throat. It means sort of use your diaphragm in that case when you are shouting, all right? But in the context of making a valid strike, it's not really to say engage in the hara, to do that, to tense your muscles at the point of making a strike. I don't think it's correct. I don't think that's the correct way of engaging the hara in a kendo context, all right? More common and more accurate would be to say to apply the koshi, which is the hips, okay? But it's the same concept, all right? And what it means is that when you're striking, that you're using your lower body and your hips to propel yourself forward so you can strike with power, okay? And not this sort of way. I don't know if I'm on the camera, not this sort of way, but from the lower body, bam, this way, okay? So you're moving this way. Yeah, and that's using the koshi or potentially the hara, but it doesn't mean to tense all the muscles, all right? Okay, should be, yeah, and then there's a sort of tension here, all right? And in your left leg, definitely, all right? And to some extent here, where it's kind of holding back, yeah, that kind of energy, like you're literally holding raging horses, ready to let them go, yeah? And then when the time comes, man, and bam, everything goes, all right? Everything, yeah? It's not tensed up like this, like this. It's this way, yeah? So yeah, they're technical terms by the way, and pa, yeah? So you might want to note of them. They're not in any books, it's a secret one. So yeah, we don't think of engaging the hara in that way in kendo. It's not right to do that. You don't want to tense up at the moment of strike. You do with your hands, of course, here, pound this way, but only for a split second. And your leg sort of does at the point of funkomi, but it's not like here in your stomach. This is kind of this way, like I say, all right? So remember those terms. Next one. If you were to wear them for some reason, would you wear the full cover or partial cover tabby? It seems to be popular with my teachers here right now to wear the full cover ones, mainly with the upper sensei on both feet, but not only in winter. So the tabby are the Japanese style socks where you've got the big toe separated from the other toes. That's what tabby are. And there's Kendo tabby. And there's the half tabby. So the full tabby are ones, the full kendo tabby are ones that are, they're a full sock that basically go on over your whole foot and they fasten at the back behind your heel and they've usually got leather soles. And then the half ones are usually like elasticated in some way and they just cover the front half of your foot. And obviously it's to protect the sole of your foot from blisters and stuff like that. I don't wear either. I have a half tabby, and I've only ever worn it in it's been a few years since I've worn it, and it was when I was still sort of full on training, sort of competitively, when I was probably training 8 or 9 times a week, and I was starting to really, get sort of splitting skin and stuff on the bottom of my foot, but I avoided wearing. I didn't like wearing them. I wouldn't wear the full ones, at least now at this point. To be honest, I don't like them that much. I'd wear, if I was to choose one, I'd wear the half one. But if I could help it, I'd get away with not wearing either, and try and just stick with tape. That's my personal thing. But the half ones are the better ones in my opinion. Hi Andy, I really like the various tenuguri designs, but don't particularly relate to the kanji ones because I can't read them. Are tenuguri available in hiragana or katakana? You don't get many in katakana, and you don't get many in hiragana either. the thing is no, not yeah. I mean, they're supposed to be quite. The meanings are written in kanji on purpose because kanji to Japanese speakers, they obviously evoke imagery to some extent, because they're sort of to an element, they're sort of pictographic, right? So they're supposed to convey complex, often, and quite philosophical concepts on a somewhat small space. So it really requires that. So not so much, but what I really recommend looking into the kanji more and kind of getting to grips with them a bit. It will help your kendo, it really will, to sort of get to grips with some of the kendo related kanji, especially if you've got an interest in Japanese language, and especially if you're talking about hiragana and katakana. And try to sort of remember some of them. Some that they show up quite a lot. Kokoro, for example, which means spirit or heart. Tadashi, which is another one that comes up a lot. It means correct. Sword, of course, the ken from kendo, that often comes up. What else comes up a lot? There's a lot of them, but it's a good way to sort of remember some kanji, actually, if you're into that sort of thing. So yeah, I do recommend it. And there's some nice ones, there's kanji that I'm not a native Japanese speaker, obviously, but and I don't read kanji super well, but there's a good number of kanji that I think are really nice kanji because I like the way they look and I like the meaning of them. So definitely, I'm still suffering from hay fever, by the way, as you can probably tell from my sort of voice. Maybe I always sound like this. I don't know. You know how you sound different in your head to how you sound. Anyway, hi Andy. 2 unrelated questions. If someone attempts to strike my kote and I use suriage to deflect it, but their shinai still ends up touching my kote after striking my shinai first, does that count as ippon? And B, on a boga hudon, if you use tight stitch widths that are very long stitch pitch, does that achieve the same cushion effect as using a wide stitch with a tight pitch? Good questions, very good questions. So, A, it really depends on the context, okay? Really depends on the context. So, someone comes for your kote, you go to use suriage, you kind of block it, but their shinai glances off and still hits your kote. Well, if you didn't technically, if we're going to go sort of really black and white on this, no, it's not, because you kind of deflected it. It's unlikely they're going to be able to make a solid strike on your kote if they've hit your shinai. But it depends what actually happens in real life. It doesn't always work like that, right? Look, if they make a solid strike and it hits your kote and it fills all the criteria of Yuko Datotsu, even though you tried to do suriage, then it could well be considered kote. If they do that, but still you return with a good suriage, and your suriage is even better than their kote, some shimpan may award the suriage waza. You can't. The thing is it's not like, right? This is the thing. A lot of people don't get. So this is a question actually as well on one of the blog posts I put up of an old video of the 7th Dantai guy where I think it was it Komeda Sensei and Takeda Sensei, I think. And Komeda Sensei hits kote and Takeda Sensei hits men and they give the men. And people are, well, why wasn't that kote? Like, well, different shimpan might have given kote. It's not like that. It's not like, well, this has to be always ippon and that always has to be not ippon. It doesn't really work like that. Of course, there's criteria that the referees interpret and apply to the situation, but that doesn't mean that it's hard and fast, black and white, always that. The shimpan decide what they think is ippon, right? They've got the rules, they've got the criteria of Yuko Datotsu, valid strikes, and they then use that to interpret the situation that's, unfolded before them as to whether they're going to award points or not, and if so, who they're going to award them to. All right, and they have the authority to do that. It's not for us from the outside to say, well, why did they do that way? Of course, we can look at it and think, well, I'm not sure I would have made that decision. But the fact is, and I made a video about this as well. And I'm going off on a tangent from your question, and I'm sort of doing this a bit because I know we've only got a few questions, so I've got the time to do it today. You know, I made a video about this. You know, when you're watching videos online and you see a strike that's either awarded Ippon or not awarded Ippon, and you don't necessarily, your opinion doesn't align with the Shimpan, I think it's not a great way to look at it and say, well, the Shimpan were wrong, they should have done this. Sometimes that happens, they make mistakes, right? Everyone's human, right? I've made mistakes when I've been doing Shimpan, of course I have. But you'd have a better Kendo learning experience if when you watch such things, you know, to sort of apply the mindset of, well, okay, well, I thought it was Ippon for the other guy, or I thought that wasn't Ippon, or I thought that was Ippon. I wonder why the Shimpan made the decision that they did, yeah? And try to think about it from their point of view, think about why would they make that decision? And maybe it's you that's wrong. You know, I've seen that before. I've watched it and been like, well, I don't know if that was right. And then I've thought about it more and thought, well, no, probably, you know, later, especially like a couple of years later, I've looked at it and thought, no, I was wrong about that, you know, after I got more experience. So, yeah, that's a tangent that didn't really answer the question. So the actual answer is, it depends, all right? It depends on what actually happens. But in theory, generally, no. As to B and the boga, so what we're talking about is how the boga is stitched. On the boga, which is the cloth part that pads the boga, there's a series of stitches that run through it in sort of multiple rows, and these rows are separated by a distance in millimeters usually. And I've done a whole video loads of whole videos about this, but the distance between these millimeter gaps, the bigger that is, the more protection you get, because you get more cushioning, but you do lose a little bit of durability. Most of us wouldn't notice a massive drop in durability, to be honest. You also lose the sort of rigidity that you might want if you want to sort of shape it. So that's why you see like Bogu, like our Vanguard, for example, it has wide stitching on the strike zone where you get hit, but on an area where it rubs against your shoulders and where you want to mold it into a nice shape, like the Mendale, we use a tighter stitching, we combine the two, right? Now what you're asking is, if you use a tight stitch width, so the small gaps, but you use a longer stitch pitch, so instead of the stitches being short, yeah, that's the pitch of it, or the sashima, yeah, instead of the interval between each placement of the needle when it's stitching, if that was longer, would it create the same effect? To some extent, yes, but not enough in a way. So no, it wouldn't be the same. All right. So the longer those, the stitching, all right, the stitch pitch or the sashima, the distance between the point at which the needle pierces the futon and places each stitch, the longer that is, of course, again, it's similar to the sashi haba, the width, the stitch width. It's similar in that it leaves more cushioning in it, but the longer that is, the more chance you've got of the thread breaking. So there's a bit of a toss up there as well. But more importantly, the difference you've got between the interval between the rows and the interval between the actual stitches is that if you put loads of rows in but have the stitches long, then you're still running a sewing machine over it, which still compacts the futon more. All right, and in total, you're still putting probably more stitches into it, so you won't get the same effect. All right, you won't get the same effect. So the best is some sort of balance in between the two. Yeah, you don't want the stitches too long because, like I say, there's a high likelihood they'll break. you want a reasonable length of the stitch, but the best thing is to select the right width between the rows for the areas of the book that you want to perform in a specific way. All right, and of course then there's the materials, craftsmanship, stuff like that. Shop at KendoStar, you won't have to worry about any of it, because we know what we're doing. Okay, last one. Now this one wasn't posted specifically for Kendo RANT, but it came up in the early access group, and I thought it was a really good question that I thought a lot of people will be struggling with. So we'll get this one done. It says, quick question from yesterday's training without sensei or experienced Shimpan there. In Jigeiko, we often have a situation where Kendoka strikes do or men and passes his opponent. The opponent turns around and strikes the first Kendoka from behind or even follows him to achieve a men strike. How is this counted? Does the reaction negate the first hit? This whole pattern is not seen in higher ranked tournaments, but we're just Q grades. So that's a great question. So what we're talking about here is after you make a strike, like passing the opponent and then either them hitting whilst you're facing away or when you turn around hitting you then. And does that negate your strike? So, right. If you strike do or men and you pass your opponent like you would in Kihon or Ichikomi or Kirikaishi when you finish it, If you strike, let's say you strike men. Let's take men as an example, all right? And you hit perfect men and you go past, all right? No, it doesn't negate it if they hit you afterwards, all right? Because you've hit a great men strike. But if your men is not a great men strike and then you turn around or you spend ages with your back to them and they hit the back of your head, even that can be considered ippon, right? Because you're turning away from them, yeah? It's like you're concealing the target, which isn't allowed. I've seen that before, like where people have like watched the shinai and one of the players has like hit and then left their back facing the opponent for ages as they sort of run off into the distance, and the opponent just hit the back of him, and then the opponent's got the ippon and people are like, how does that ippon when they weren't even facing him? It's like, yeah, they were like stuck with the back to them. What do you expect? Where are they going to hit? You can't do that. It's kind of cheating, isn't it? Anyway, if you don't think about that, now it's not great practice, but you don't stand with your back to someone, which I'll get to in a minute. So anyway, you hit men. It's not great ippon. It doesn't count. You fly off into the distance, man, like this, then you turn around and they hit your men. 100 times out of 100, that's ippon for them. All right, because that's you know what I mean? Like you deserve it, innit? So, yeah. So, here's the thing. Don't turn your back on your opponent. Like you said, high ranked tournaments, you don't do it. It's because, here's the big thing. In Keiko, Shiai, Tachiai, grading, any situation where you're doing a competitive tachiai, where you're kind of facing off with each other, after you hit men, you don't take your eyes off them. After you hit Kote, you don't take your eyes off them. After you hit do, you might have to for the mechanics of the cut, and you do it for as short a time as possible. Yeah? As short a time as possible, and it's dangerous. That's why you don't see many do strikes. But when you hit men, you do not turn your back on your opponent, all right? So, Andy, why do we do that in Kihon? Why do we do that in Ichikomi? Why do we do that in Kirikaishi? That last men in Kirikaishi, we hit and we go past and we leave them behind us. Why would we do that if we're not supposed to do it? Well, that's a good question as well that wasn't asked, but I'm going to answer it anyway. That is for you to improve the mechanics of your kendo, right? Is to get better at ashisabaki, footwork. Is to get better at cutting with momentum and systemic, right? It's not supposed to be how you make Jisenteki realistic. Is that the right thing? The real strikes. Yeah? Don't do that. All right? So don't hit and go off into the distance, man, like this. Yeah? If you've got another guy who's trying to hit you, because they're going to hit you in the back of the head. You can't deserve it because you're kind of showing it. All right? So don't do that. Right? Hitmen go forward. They're not going to move out of your way like they do in Kihon, right? Because it's not Kihon. You're going to hit men. You're going to go straight forward. They're not going to move, so you're going to crash into them. Then you're going to either keep going forward but keep looking at them, or most likely what's going to happen is there's going to be some kind of separation where you kind of hit each other and you're going to go backwards like you do after Hikiwaza, and you're going to keep your eyes on them the whole time and then go back to Kamae and it's Ippon. Right? You ain't going to go, man, like this. All right? There's a video I've done about it on Zanshin. Go and watch that. I explain it in detail. It's really something that is a big thing with beginners. And when I say beginners, I'm sort of including third dan and below, which isn't really beginners, but sort of lower level dan grades and below. So anything third dan below is such a common thing that has to stop. All right. It's something that when we was teaching kids in Japan, when they get to about 9, they hit that barrier there where we're like, look, you got to stop doing that because you're going to start losing the matches. All right. Up until then, they're just hitting each other and like they would like it's kind of mindless, their shinai at that age, except the really good kids. And the really good kids at that age, they don't do it. They kind of get it. But most of the kids, they're kind of just mindless in the shinai. Yeah, man, yeah, man, yeah, man. And then, yeah, one of them will hit the door and get Ippon. But, you know, we come to that sort of understanding too late where we can think, oh, yeah, you just go straight through like that. All right? Don't do it. Okay? Good. That's it for today. Thank you for joining me. Bit of a shorter episode. I padded it out with some tangents and stuff, but thanks for sticking to the end. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. When you hit subscribe, a little bell appears. That's the Kendo bell. Should have said this at the start. So, as a reward for staying here to the end, I'm going to tell you the secret of the bell. When you ring the bell, you instantly start getting better at Kendo. It's true. It's fact. Scientifically proven. It's exponential growth in your Kendo ability once you click that bell. All right? So make sure you've done that. All right? You don't want to be not getting better at Kendo when you could be. Yeah? Shop at KendoStar. See you all next time. Bye-bye.